there is this perception in democracy. Well, it's a dual perception, almost paradoxical, that in democracy, in the Western democracies, you are able to choose freely your government, your leaders, and at the same time there is a more, let's say, underground perception that no matter what you choose, things will more or less remain the same. It doesn't matter if the government or the person changes. And this is a negative perception. But it's very common, widespread, very commonly spread among opinions of the people. And it's funny how these two perceptions play their dual role in the mechanics of the thoughts, of the collective thought, because whenever you're arguing against countries that are portrayed as enemies, such as Russia and Iran and China, one of these perceptions immediately gets into play. Like, no, but we get to choose freely, we get to speak our minds, and so on and so on. But when you talk about internally discussing the problems of one's country, whatever that country is, it really doesn't make a difference. The perception that little change is made, and often for the worse, it's the one that takes place in the minds of people. That therefore you have this mantra that all politicians are bad. Politicians are these guys that no one likes. Politicians have bad reputation. So, and how is it possible, I ask myself, how is it possible for the two perceptions go along at the same time? Because there is a conflict between them. Because either if you believe that you live in a democracy, so people put in power are the ones that are chosen by the majority, so the state of affairs is a result of that. Or the other way around. No matter who you put in power, things seems to they seem to follow a different path after elections are decided. I mean, you have a president, a government that, and I'm talking about, I can apply this to maybe since the 1960s, 70s, 1970s, so on, yeah. And so it's interesting how this shapes the minds of people and shapes opinions and shapes the state of affairs, because how can you believe that you live in a democracy and you utterly and you vehemently criticize other countries that you don't even know in the big majority of the cases, like China, Russia, many others? Those, I give those as example because those are the paradigm now. They are the evil that needs to be fought according to Western narratives. And you have two thoughts at the same time in your head as a Western citizen. But in reality, the sad reality is that only one of these is true. They are both perceptions. Perceptions, it is what the word means. It's what you perceive from the outside of you. And we know that many times perceptions are wrong. For example, you can have perception of insecurity in your life. That can be wrong. For example, I give There is a very good example here where I live, but it does not apply. I'm just going to give it because I see it with my own eyes. Is that you have an influx of immigrants, and so the streets get, you see the presence of a lot of different people, different color of skin, different culture, different habits. Normally, many times, oftentimes they hang around in groups of men. And so this creates the perception of insecurity in many people. Although it does not correspond to the truth. Right? Because most violent and petty crime still gets committed by the locals. So yeah, perceptions. But only one of these two perceptions is right. And in my opinion, it's the perception that whoever you vote for nowadays has little weight on the decisions of your life, over the society which you belong to, therefore your life. And it's amazing for me, how can we maintain such systems like this? It's amazing. At the same time, for me, it's case study, and I'm sure sociologists and anthropologists, I'm sure there's a lot of articles written out there about this, about phenomena like people loving their exploiter, right? Instead of rebelling against it. I mean, their exploiter, it can be a person, a company, a whole system, right? And how things like that are possible? They are not logically possible. If you harm me, I will hold grudge against you, and eventually, if I have the chance, I will overthrow your position of power over me. This seems the logical things to do, but no. People keep believing that they live in the exceptional world. Everything around, it's like Borel's definition, right? We are the garden, everything around is jungle, and we believe that we are on the right all the time, most of the times, but at the same time, we believe that our politicians are shit. So this cannot be. This is intriguing, and I'm making this video in order to provoke this thought. Just think about it. Because even when you are, and I've met several people with this kind of thinking, even when you are utterly discontent, utterly deceptioned with your government and with the general state of the leadership you have had in the past 20, 30 years, you are dissatisfied, you complain a lot, you have a lot of legitimate reasons for that, motives for that. But when you are told, you are rang the bells of Russia and China and Iran being examples, just you immediately think you are in an upper position of superiority, even of moral superiority. I think it requires some education. It requires time to think. It requires an open mind to get rid of this. It basically, you have been washed by propaganda if you have this duality that I'm talking about. Even if you don't want to admit, in my humble opinion, non-expert, just a worker, just this expression, a mere worker, as if the workers were not the pillar of our society. But doesn't matter. Not going into that. Just my opinion, that's all I'm saying. You have been brainwashed by propaganda. I'm not immune to that. I'm not putting myself in a position of superiority towards the people who I think that are affected by this. I'm sure I have my dualities, my paradoxical issues, but concerning to this that I'm speaking, the state of affairs, the state of the health of our democracy, the way we see our society being run, I think this is one of the biggest diseases nowadays, because it's giving a free pass to people that already hold power. As time passes, they have more and more tools to maintain that power over you, and more tools to prevent you from one day making a revolution to end that cycle of inequality. And all evidence points to this, but because you have even studies. For example, when you have a troika, IMF intervention in your country, it's all but democratic. It's an imposed dictatorship, and it's an imposed dictatorship that produces a very practical and simple, observable result, which is the transfer of wealth from the middle and poor classes to the upper classes. And this would be on itself enough for one to realize that a lot of bullshit one cannot believe that is being told about everything, about migrants, about other systems of government, other styles of governments, other leaders. I mean, go to China, see how people live there. And this being said, I haven't been there yet. That's a future project. But go to Russia. There I have been. I intend to return because, it's kind of a big country. And see for yourself, talk to the people. Again, and I repeat this many times, I am not demonizing country or a region and glorifying the other. There's no good and evil duality here, right? No good and evil dichotomy. That's what I mean. I don't want to give that. I just want to try to counter this main contagious narrative and the dominant ideology put forward by neoliberal policies. I mean, it goes to the absurd. Listen to me. It goes to the absurd that when you live in a completely neoliberal country, well, all the policies are neoliberal, all your wealth and strategical country resources of the country have been privatized, income inequalities is getting bigger and bigger, social services are being dilapidated, health, education dilapidated. They can convince you, when all this is going on, they can convince you that you live in a socialist country. And people buy it. How stupid can you be? I'm sorry. I didn't want to call anyone stupid. They're more of victims, I think. But it's kind of obvious. I mean, the refugee, there are several weapons of information used to convince you of this. And one of them for me is the petty one. It's what I have hard time to swallow. It's when people are pitted against each other. Poor against poor, middle against poor. And this works. It works very much. Whenever a crisis arises, for example, recent wildfires in Portugal that are still going on, this crisis arisen, immediately people turn to who? The petty criminals, the employees of the mafias, not the structural problem that create the mafias in the first place, or that is created by them, right? So, it's one example. Or people who live off minimum pension, which is, if you try to, and I challenge you if you live in Portugal, to live with that value. If you're one of these people that don't like, points at A, B, or C person and says, oh, it doesn't do, I have to go and work every day to support his income, I challenge you to change place with this person. He goes to work and you go and get that income for a living, and then let me know how did that go. Yeah, this is my rambling for this morning. Gonna hit the bed after the night shift, and I hope sincerely to see you in good health on the next time. Lay down your comments, rebuff everything I said, challenge it, and it's because it's refreshing to have challenge ideas, and it's healthy. I'm sorry, one more thing I forgot. It's the same way that you convince people that a genocidal nation, a terrorist nation, is the only democracy in a certain region. It's the same mechanics, it's the same kind of thought, and it's unbelievable for me. Okay, now that is all.